Hello. Welcome to season 2, episode 3 of Rewind with Ro. I am your host, Ro Carter, and I have my amazing co-host,
Rob Smith.
Hello, Smith. How are you? So smooth. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I'm living life like it's golden.
Oh, okay. All right. It's golden. Crazy week this week. A lot of stuff that happened. Anything big in your life or just watching the news?
Oh my gosh. The news is just sad and scary and heartbreaking and all those other things. So, that's why I'm living life like it's golden.
Okay.
Man.
Again, happy Black History Month second week. Yes.
Yes.
Really good. Shout out to Beyonce. She has the most Grammy Awards of all time. So, we didn't get to talk about it, but what did you think about the show? Did you?
The Grammy?
Were you like, eh?
No, I absolutely love the Grammys. I thought it was the tribute to the 50th anniversary of hip hop was phenomenal. It was like I was out of my seat, even though couldn't be out of my seat because I was getting a pedicure at the time. But and he jacked up my toes. But anyway, it was a great show. The Grammys were wonderful. I mean,
Sam Cooke? Not Sam Cooke. Sam Smith? Sam Smith?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that before. We've seen Lil Nas X.
Yeah, I was but he got less heat than Lil Nas X did. So I was like, all right, that must be.
And we all know why, but whatever.
Yeah.
But no, I absolutely loved the show. And of course, Beyonce's, untouchable. And I absolutely love Beyonce's album. But I just can y'all just let this man enjoy his Grammy? Like, good Lord.
Who?
Good Lord. Harry Styles. Like, let the man just enjoy his Grammy. They're booing him on stage, come on. He's not the person who did that. Lead him. Beyonce is happy. She's glowing. She broke history with the Grammys. Let the man enjoy his Grammy. That's all I got to say. I mean, they be playing in Beyonce's face. I agree, but it ain't his fault. Why are we booing this man on stage? Come on.
You got to keep the people across the sea, happy. Across the pond. You got to keep the pond people happy, man. That's where the money is.
Keep the pond people happy.
Mm-hmm. Hey, he's their Beatles,
Yeah.
One guy, so you got to keep him happy. Interesting.
I love his music too. It's great.
Yeah. The performances were great. Is there anything that I was upset about? Oh, supposedly J-Lo was supposed to perform.
J-Lo?
Yeah, J-Lo was supposed to do a tribute to Whitney Houston. Remember that? Remember you heard about this? There was all talk about it. I'm so listen. I'm not. This is my own opinion. We're not here to hate it all either. Not to throw shade at anybody. I'm kind of glad it just happened the way it did.
Me too.
But supposedly that was supposed to happen. It did not happen. So, but she looked amazing. She
looked great. And leave that couple alone too. Yeah, these people just stirring up drama left and right. They stirring up drama with Beyonce. They stirring up drama with J-Lo. They stirring up drama. Well,
the pictures of Jay-Z are hysterical.
I mean, the whole Takeoff tribute that did hurt me a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, and that was nice too. That was a great moment. And
I think Offset should have been on stage. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. It's stuff out there.
I'm gonna stay out of that. But
a lot of politics going on. Can we all just get along? One month. Can we all just get along, please? All right. So let's move on to it. Start of the show.
We should send our thoughts and prayers to all those people in Turkey and Syria. Oh my gosh.
I was gonna do it after
1,000 people dead so far. Oh, it's just devastating and sad.
The numbers get crazy and crazier. I mean, please, if you can donate, maybe I'll put something up if we can find some later that actually is a true donation site that you can go to. But I'm sure there is stuff that you can contribute. I just saw them rescue a dog. I was like, oh my God.
It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And it can happen to anyone. That's the thing. It wasn't war. It was a natural disaster. So remember, and be mindful of where you're at and who you're with. And it can be gone in a second. So definitely our thoughts and prayers to them. And if you can definitely donate to help, I would highly recommend. So here we go. I decided to do a documentary this week. It's called Stand. It's on Showtime currently. It is the story of, well, let's do it like this. Before there was Colin Kaepernick, there was Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. A lot of people, you don't remember him, but he played in the NBA for a short period of time, got blackballed, a.k.a. Chris Jackson. He played for LSU, then went into college after, I want to say, his second year in college. Played a lot in Shaq back in the day when Shaq was dominating LSU. But he was just a player to be reckoned with and wanted to make the best for his family. Also suffered from Tourette's, which I didn't know about Tourette's until I saw him playing the NBA. Not when he was even in college. I remember I only heard about it when he made it to the pros, and I was like, oh, wow. So you saw this on display too. So it really opened up the conversation about people that had Tourette's and that you actually can function and live a normal life. But there are people that have these tics and stuff, so you shouldn't be looking at them as these weirdos, but as just another person. So I love that was to the forefront in a conversation that needed to be had. Also, his defiance of switching to Muslim and being a Muslim, Islamic beliefs, and then not standing for the flag. And we've been there before, right? In terms of like, hey, you know what? I want to kind of do my own thing. So what I want to do is kind of go into this story. We're not going to give it away because the story has already been told, but
yeah,
it's a deeper perspective from his side, which I love. So you get to see him on screen talking about these moments, people from his childhood, also prominent athletes in sports, in basketball. So I love that. You get all sides, which is really cool, and kind of see what kind of person he was, but also you get to see what kind of person he matured to as a father and as a grown adult. So what did you think first when I picked this out? Because Rob's from Chicago, not a huge basketball person, but you know, he knew what was going on. So what did you think about this? Were you happy? Did you know anything about Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, or are you just?
I'll say I'm not a big sports person, because I do love sports, and I did grow up in a household that, I mean, I'm from Chicago, and I grew up in the era of the Bulls being untouchable. So of course, you know, I am a fan. I'm always going to be a loyal Bulls fan, even though, you know, whatever. But yes, I was not hesitant to watch this, but I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll watch it. And I'm glad you really pushed for this to be the project that we talk about this week, because there's so much to unpack with this film, right? And I think this is the kinds of conversations that we need to continue to put in front of people, in front of human beings. These are the conversations we should be having, because these are the conversations that matter, because, you know, human relations is so important. And like, this film to me is a prime example of why education and empowering youth with education is so important, because if we don't know the things that have happened in the past, we're doomed to repeat it, right? And we found ourselves repeating this exact same situation with Colin Kaepernick. And, you know, it saddens me that we're in a position right now where, and this is such a diversion of the conversation, but I'm gonna circle right back, where we're in a position right now where we're like facing conversations of removing AP African American studies from, you know, educational programs state by state, which to me is disgusting. And it's a disgusting conversation. And to mask that even furthermore by saying, oh, there's a queer study section in it, whatever. But that diversion was to say, if we continue to go down this path of removing the education or the history of what happens to Black people as a whole in American culture, we're doomed to repeat it in a very horrifying way, which is happening. And this story and more stories like this need to continue to be told. So Jocelyn Rose Lyons,
give a shout out to her, Jocelyn Rose Lyons. This is amazing filmmaker. Yeah. She is award winner. She also did the 8-part anthology series that gives fans a glimpse called Revolution. You can actually see that on Apple TV. But it gives fans a glimpse into the lives of their favorite athletes. So that she did that last year. You can actually check out Koku's interview with her, and that's on blackfilm.com.
Yep.
Cool. So let's go into it. So I'm going to break it up into sections here. I'm going to start in the beginning of the movie when we start watching the doc, and he grows up in Mississippi, right? Doesn't know who his father is. He's with his brother. His mom is basically broke. They barely have heat or food. To hear the story, listen. I don't know how your childhood was. Mine was kind of crazy. I had my aunts and uncles down the street, so if I was in that predicament, I could go get something. I had means to go walk down the street and do that. But to be shooting your food, it's not like your back country. This is Mississippi, and he's like, "Well, yeah, I shot a pigeon or I killed a squirrel." I was like, "Wait, what?" And then that would be our dinner for the night. I'm like, "Get the hell out of here!" It's like my brother would do that. So, growing up as a young black kid in one of the most racist areas at that time, and it continues to be a little shady. I couldn't even imagine that. So, what did you feel about that part? Did you put yourself in his shoes? How did that feel?
I did not grow up like that. I was fortunate enough to grow up in an environment where my parents like worked 2 jobs each to make sure that we had like a kind of a shelter.
And you had both parents as well.
Yeah, and I had both parents there. But I would say it was definitely moving to it was a moving experience to see his story and to hear the passion that he approached life with, which I would say was like spurred by, his mother and the relationship we had with his mother. And also what you spoke about earlier, him dealing with having a condition that people really didn't know how to define. They didn't know what it was. The people, who were in his life didn't know how to, they didn't know how to describe what he was dealing with. So it was like, oh, he has, whatever, he has habits and he'll get rid of them. And, him being reprimanded for some of his habits in the household because his family didn't really understand what it was. But though that kind of really being the catalyst for what drove him to be as great as he is, because his condition drove him to want perfection, whether it was like from a feeling, of not a moment being imperfect or the way his clothes felt on his body, but like him wanting to like work harder over and over and over and over and constantly repeating the movements and the practice of becoming great. But a lot of it was fueled by him not having the identity of who his father was, and 2, him having a condition that pushed him to like want perfection in those moments, right? So it was very moving to watch that and to see that as the foundation of the film. So you really get an understanding of where he came from, how hard he fought to be where he was, where he leveled up to, and the perfection that he walked into his career with, which was spurred by his upbringing and his condition. It was I think she did a beautiful job of laying the foundation of who he was as a person and where he came from and how it made him great.
Well, I just want to touch on the point you said earlier. So many times I remember, I'm growing up in the 80s, you didn't have answers for what you had, right? If ADHD wasn't until later, right? Late 90s, early 2000s. And so he's the weird kid or he's that kid. And then there's a moment when his mom goes, they have an old video. It's like, oh my God, I didn't know he had that, and I wouldn't have been screaming on him. I wouldn't have treated him that way because I knew what he had. And then I love when Abdul Rauf says, you know what, I have Tourette's. And he's like excited because he knew what he had, right? That's another thing that blew my mind. Imagine this whole time you've had something, you can't understand it. You don't understand like what's going on with your body. Am I weird? Am I crazy? No, it's actually called something, and other people have this. Okay, now I'm not a weirdo. I can actually go to school, enjoy my life. Yes, I have this, but now there's a name to it. So that was a beautiful moment. It really made me look deep inside myself and to be like, wow, imagine going through that, especially in a time, kids pick on you in high school, elementary school, and all that stuff. So, and then I'll touch on again where you talked about repetitions. That was a big thing for him, right? So he would take 10 jump shots. If the 10th foul shot didn't swish in, he'd do it all over again. So that's just crazy how his mind worked over and over and over again. So we'd be outside playing basketball like 3 or 4 hours a day. And
in the rain.
Yeah, even it didn't matter. Rain, whatever it was, he would just be playing. So his shot just became unbelievable. His range was unbelievable. His dribbles, cross. He even talks about later, you talk about the Bulls, where he goes to this camp and he gives Jordan a crossover. I was like, get the hell. I want to see I've been Googling for the footage. No one has. I don't blame Mike. Mike probably bought the footage a long time ago, but
And that was when he was in high school, right?
yeah, in high school, and he cuts Mike and then does a step. But he's like, hey, I've been doing this my whole life, and that just reassured me that what I'm doing is good. It's positive, right? So you're going out and doing this stuff because you're just trying to escape from all the craziness. On top of that, you're learning a skill set and a level. So I love that. It blew my mind away. So
yeah. And one other thing you touched on, I thought was so powerful that he said was when he found, like you said, when he found out he had Tourette's, he was even like excited to be able to go to school and say what it was to people, because there was power in knowing what it was, and there was power in being able to like know that he wasn't just a weird person, you know. And I thought that was like beautiful for him to share that. Like he was proud to go to school and be like, I have Tourette's, like you know, that was great. And it just showed how another thing what they I think did that was great was just really show how he was a humble, kind person. He was just a good person.
Yeah. But with him being a good person, though, he's still trying to find himself, right? So that's how we see the next phase of his life. He goes to college, gets into LSU. His second year, he winds up playing with Shaq, right? So if you guys remember when Shaq came into college, he was breaking backboards. Like no one did this before. So that's who your player, you know. But I love when Shaq, and that's another great part about this documentary, is that they actually talk to the players, right? So they've had that experience. They kind of know what he was like. But Shaq was like, I don't really know what he was like, you know, in college, because he just stayed in his room all day. You know, he really kept to himself. So to go back to what you said, you know, he just kept himself, was a nice guy, always polite, didn't want to hang out, didn't want to party. I'm like, college, that's when you do it. But he was more about just finding himself and kind of sticking to the path is, hey, I want to play ball. I want to get better at this. That's all I want to do. So I kind of love that you got to see what type of person he was and how committed he was to the thing he loved, but still trying to find himself. And I mean, I think we all at one point in our lives have been, whether it be college, high school, even now, be like, what the hell is my purpose here? What do I want to do? And so his purpose is on a whole nother level. And I can't even imagine what, you know, like imagine getting, there's a point where he's talking about, hey, I just dropped 30 points on one of the top colleges and we beat them. And now I have to stand in front of all these people. So my image on the court is way different than me talking in front of people. I just shut down because I was so nervous. I didn't know. I felt like the spotlight was on me, and I have Tourette's. So he always learned how to deal with Tourette's at every different level, which was amazing for me because it doesn't stop, right? Tourette's doesn't say like, okay, you made it to this level, you're going to be cool, right? Oh, you made it to this level, it's going to go away. No, it's still with you no matter what. So he's learning these experiences as you go. And we kind of learn those same experience, which again, shout out to her, Jocelyn. She really captured when Abdul Rauf is talking and telling, he's like, listen, I was going in, man, I had the best game of my life. But as soon as I got off the court, I was a totally different person. My brain just shut down. I was more kept to myself. So I love how they really show that and shine a light on that spot.
And I love, yes. And I think you brought up Shaq, which I thought was a powerful moment, was when Shaq, which again, like hearing these athletes who are, you know, in most of our minds, the best players of all time, right? And hearing Shaq say, which I thought was insane. I was like, wow. Shaq said it's something to the effect of, when I saw him play, it was like watching God play basketball.
Yeah, I was like,
he was that good. I was like, let me tell you, if that's not like, man, this man is good, then I don't know what to say. You know, so it just,
I've seen Kobe, I've seen MJ, I've seen Larry Bird. It's like this Magic Johnson, God. I was like, really? That said a lot.
Some skill right there.
and again, I mean, just think about that. A lot of the players are like saying, you know, they would ask him after the games, like, was that the Tourette's or was that you, right? Because he would jerk back and he would throw defenders off. But he was like, kept a little secret. Well, you know, hey. So I kind of love that he had a sense of humor about it as well. What else did I want to mention? So through college, he goes home, I guess during the break, and he comes home, and I guess he's going to wash his face at this in the bathroom, and the sink just breaks. He hits the sink, and the thing literally just falls to the ground. And he's looking around. He's like, man, I got to get my family out of here. We're living in poverty still. I'm one of the best players in the country, and I'm living like this. So with that, he decides, you know what, I got to get my family out of here. We got to go. I'm going to put myself in the draft of the NBA. And once again, he faces the question, hey, can he play at that level? Also with Tourette's. And so I love, there's something about when doctors actually can be good or bad, right? And so they're good in this, right? They said, no, he can do all that. It's actually better that he has it. And that's why he has this skill set, because he's doing that. So they actually had to write a letter for him to send to all these teams in the NBA so that when he got drafted, so he went from 13 in the draft to 3 in the draft, which is amazing. Trust me, that's especially back then. This is like the Christian Laettner days, again, the Shaq days. These are like top talents that are like now 100 of the greatest. Well, now they have 75 now, but 75 top of the greatest NBA players of all time. He's playing in some with the 20 or 30 of them, and that's crazy that he's getting drafted at that level of number 3. Now, with that being said, he has to gain some weight now because now you're going to the pros. So the biggest misconception is, oh man, you got to gain weight, And sometimes you do, especially playing ball and the big guys are hitting you and stuff like that. He came up in a time where the NBA, you could do whatever you want. You really clothesline a dude going to the hall, where it's a lot softer now than it was back then. So in his mind, it's like, you know what, I'm listening to everybody, but I know myself. I know what's in my heart. And then that threw him off again, and he had to find himself again. So then someone gives him the book, Malcolm X, and he starts reading the book. And the one thing I'll say, and I'll let you go, Rob, the one thing about the book, Malcolm X, if you don't finish that book, you can go, your brain will go a different direction. That is a deep book, and you have to finish that to the fullest, or you will have one opinion. And that when he talked about that book, and I was like, wow, that's a powerful book. But if you don't read it all the way through, it can really do some damage to a young black man, especially that time, especially coming from Mississippi.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is the part of the story that kind of, it was humanizing him, right? Where he is seeing himself through the lens of everyone else as he levels up and, enters the NBA. And like you said, he gets this experience where he feels like, okay, I have to gain weight. I have to do this because I'm competing against people who are bigger. I'm competing at a higher level. And to see that kind of was to the detriment of his capabilities, and because he lost his agility, he lost his speed. So, it was interesting to watch that and to see his journey into, they talked about how he was already he was into Christianity. He was already like a religious person. But, he felt like something was missing and he didn't know what that something was. And that kind of led him down the journey of finding, of transitioning to becoming Muslim, which and in that he found the power to kind of have that self-identity, and he lost that weight that he put on, and he was able to, return to himself and return to the player that he was prior to walking into the NBA. And that propelled him to the level of success that he started to see. And I think that was a beautiful part of the story, which leads to the unpacking of things that are much more insane. So I'll let you lead us into that.
Yes, and before I go there, I'm gonna mispronounce his name. The actor that they get into the documentary, who became a Muslim, black dude, brother.
Oh,
Mahershala
Ali. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I want to butcher it. Yeah, but Mahershala Ali, he switched, he converted. And it was great to hear him kind of talk about his experience, and then him remembering, hey, I had Muhammad Ali, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and then I had Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, and that was the closest to my generation. So I really felt that. It's like I played sports, and I needed that light, right? I wanted someone to kind of help me, that guidance and understanding what God meant to me and what purpose I served. Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf goes down, I don't want to label it as a dark path, but when you speak to people that are with the faith, you can be, I guess, to compare it to, like, there's Hasidic Jews, and then there's people that are just, I follow the Jewish faith. And so Muslims can be the same way, right? They're deep dive into that, or like, hey, I still do the beliefs, I still do this and that, but I'm not as like all entrenched in it. And so when he first starts out, he goes all in, meaning like, when it comes to, when he goes to Mecca, And he comes back home and he's like, if people say if you can afford it, if you have the means to go to Mecca, you must do it. So he goes to Mecca, and then he gets his higher level. So now when he goes back to the NBA, even going home to his friends, and that I felt this, and I want to hear your opinion on this. Seeing his friends' parents and saying, "Hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in so long," and he was like, "I'm sorry, I can't touch you." And it was like, "Wait, what? You can't touch me?" And this is Mississippi. It's just like it's for. But these are the people that helped you, right? When you had no clothes on your back, when you needed food, they fed you and did all these things, and they took it as a slight, not really understanding what he was going through in his faith and what it meant. So I felt that on so many levels, because I think at that time, this is again pre 9/11, we still didn't really understand that religion or faith. I still don't think we understand it, in America yet. But my point is to have that conversation and kind of be like, you know what? Oh, understanding both sides versus just taking it as a disrespect. So I want to know what you felt when that moment happens. Would you take that as a slight of someone you helped out, slept in your house, stayed in your couch that you fed, all of a sudden now went into this religious belief and was like, hey man, I'm sorry, I can't, God is my light now.
No, I wouldn't be offended. But again, my ego isn't fragile. And that white woman's ego was fragile because here it is. She helped this poor little Negro out. And she didn't take the time to understand the space he was in and the space he was growing into. And that's not his fault. And his choice for not wanting to touch her based in his religion. Why does that affect your ego? Why are you going around town spreading the fact that he chose not to hug you, as opposed to, hey, I know the guy who I helped out. I know the person who I've been in their life for a very long time, and I know the kind of person they are. In my mind, you go, oh, let me understand a little bit more about why he's making this decision or why he's choosing to go down this path, as opposed to let me go spread it across town that he chose not to hug me. And to me, that's her fragile ego. I don't know this woman. I mean, I know they interviewed her son, and again, to me, that her poor ego was hurt because he chose not to hug her, but he chose not to hug her out of honoring his faith. And if she chose not to go down the road of understanding or discovery as to what that meant to this human being who she'd known for a very long time, that's her fault. And I think that, again, that was the catalyst to a spiraling that led to the downfall of this human being's career and his life. And to me, I have no sympathy, nor do I have understanding for her choice to go in that direction. Because for me, if you want to honor this person and you care about this person so much and you're affected by it, your first course of action would be to talk to that person, not to go spread it around town.
And I was gonna give you like 1% of like maybe try to understand because of the timing that it was. But when you laid it out like that, you're 100% right? You're the grown up adult in that situation, right? And taking the time out to put that young kid who's very fragile, just trying to find something positive, thinking about where he came from and trying to understand, empathizing with him. She didn't show any empathy, right? She just, again, the fragile ego. I was going to stick up with her for one reason only, is because we're now at a point to compare to 2023 versus the 80s and 90s, right? Now people are actually seeking therapy, right? We're actually having conversations or we're even crying and being emotional. We didn't have that back then. You couldn't be emotional. You were weak. You couldn't be this or that. So I don't even think she was able. You're saying it's the ego, and again, I could be, kill me later, but I don't even think it was even in our head to even understand that, because it's so far. I just think we weren't even educated enough to even have that mind to sit back and kind of understand. Oh, let me understand, because his mom didn't even understand him. Even when they said it, it's like, I treat him like that. The mom could have been the bigger person, like, hey, I want to find out what's wrong with my baby. She didn't do that, right? And so
with respect to what? To him having
Tourette's. That's what I'm saying. So it's like, again, religion and Tourette's are totally two different things. Yeah. But I'm just saying that same mindset to have, like, hey, I want to figure this out. I want to understand why this is. That's what I mean by that, the bigger picture of that.
But so, see, I think, and again, like, I think his mom did, in defense of her, and his mom did want to find out what it was, and they had constantly been told, don't worry, he has habits and he'll grow out of those habits. So for her her son is in the kitchen and he keeps opening the refrigerator door and slamming it. Like any of us are going to be like, if you don't close that damn refrigerator and leave it alone, like that's going to be the conversation, because he's in there opening, closing. If you don't if you don't stop letting that cold air out of that refrigerator, you're going to be starving later. And they were a family that, worked hard for the small amount that she had. She was raising these 3 kids, and if he's standing at the refrigerator opening, closing, I'd have been saying, if you don't close that refrigerator door before something go bad in there, it's gonna be a problem. Like, and she said, it was said later, she was like, she felt bad. She said in an interview, I was devastated when I found out he had Tourette's, because I had been reprimanding my child for something he couldn't control. But again, they did seek out answers, and the answers they were given were mediocre. And that's probably due to, again, a lack of concern or care for the people.
Oh, imagine bringing a Black kid to the hospital at that time and going through something like that. I couldn't even imagine. Like, oh yeah, he's gonna have that. He's
roll out of it.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
Yeah. So for me, there's a little bit of there's not a comparison to me for those 2 factors. Okay. And mainly because, again, this grown woman who was so slighted by the idea of him saying, hey, I can't hug you. Okay, great. Let's have a conversation, me and you. But for you to go spread it around town was problematic for me.
And that's a bigger picture, right? It's like, just because I give something to you doesn't mean you owe me, right? Right. And I think we have to remember that at the end of the day. No matter what you do, out of the kindness, you say it's the kindness of your heart, then you shouldn't be expecting something in return. And so that's the bigger picture there, right? Just saying, hey, if it happens, it happens, but I didn't do that because I wanted something back. I did that because I actually care about you, and I saw you were down. So anyway, moving on. This is where the big moment happened. Oh, sorry, you want to go?
Before we move on, and because I think, again, there's so much in this documentary to unpack, and I think a major point that was so hurtful and devastating to me was the way that this man was treated in his own town. Like when he was in college, like the fact that he could walk into a stadium and these adults in the room understand that there's a level of pain in his life because he doesn't know who his father is. And they're
that one game.
Who's your dad? Who's your dad? And the whole stadium chanting that is disgusting to me. And the space that we live in, where we view, and this is such a hard conversation to have, because it really does make you look at the way we treat athletes, especially athletes of color, as if they're cattle. And it's like he's good enough to score for us, but he's still this brown boy that we don't care about.
Yeah, it's shut up and dribble. That's all it is. Shut up and dribble.
It was disgusting to me that the level of disrespect for another human being that people have, that viewpoint progresses as the film progresses, and it's like, where's the humanity? Where?
That's a great point, Rob. And this was a tough one for me. I grew up in Staten Island. So Staten Island is, how you doing? It's a very special place. And I remember in high school, we had these two tall white dudes from Russia. And I remember they were playing, and the stands, they flew at it. This is like a bad Russian time. And so they left Russia, fled Russia, and then came to the States, and they got their kids enrolled. They were good players, but people would chant USA, USA. And so when I'm watching this, I'm like, holy cat. I'm like, what were we doing? Right? What were we doing? And now to put the color part in there, it makes it even worse. But I was like, holy shit. Can a fan go too far? They always can. But like in sports, that's just the normal, right? Right. Part of that is like you cheer and root for your team, but at what level do you disrespect somebody, right? Russell Westbrook all the time. He's like, people call me shit. Sorry, pardon my French. People call me stuff to me in the stands, and they say stuff to my family that's sitting there. And there should be levels like, hey, I can say stuff, but I would never disrespect somebody to the length of calling them the N-word or doing all these other things. And so I don't know how we kind of regulate that. It still happens to this day. You know, certain areas you'll go to teams, whether it be in college or pro sports, and you're just like, yo, this has to be a there has to be a conversation about this. And I love that this kind of brings it up again, like, oh wow, yeah, athletes do get disrespected. It doesn't matter, you know, how good you are. I still am a human being when I get off that court.
Yeah, absolutely. And this has been the same story that's told over and over again by athletes, from Serena Williams to Tiger Woods. You know, like, at what point do we humanize them and realize these are people? These are people who have to, like, go to bed when they get home, and they have to wake up in the morning, and the things that we put them through as fans, like, that sticks with them and it lives with them. And like, I know that there are moments that I've experienced in life where I've experienced racism or hatred, whether it be for like, you know, sexuality or whatever it may be. And those moments stay with you. And those moments, you at some point you do have to unpack in some kind of therapy. But like, the idea that we don't see them as human beings and we see them as just cattle is disgusting to me. And I shouldn't say we, because I don't. But
I think it's cattle. I think it only gets cattle because it's a step above cattle, because they're getting paid, right? So they put the number value on them because, again, you're getting paid. So I don't want to hear anything you have to say about this stuff, because we're paying for you. You don't own shit, but because we're paying for you to play this game, you shouldn't have an opinion. That's basically what it is. So I think it's a little bit, it's still, you know, the cattle. I get the mindset of being cattle, but I think I don't think it's worse or a little bit better, because, again, their reason is you are getting paid, so I get to say this. So every time I go into the stands, I buy your jersey or buy a ticket, that is paying you. So I can do whatever I want, because it is my American right to say whatever I am, because I am paying your salary, right? Yep. So that it's a deeper level where we just kind of program them at an early age. Hey, I pay for this ticket. Now my ticket gives me the right to do whatever I want. You can read the ticket, which is funny now. When you read it nowadays, it'll say like certain rights you have as a participant, that you shouldn't be disrespecting and stuff like that. But that's a whole nother level. So let's move right along. This is the grit of basically the documentary. I guess one of the announcers, because he's playing for Denver, right? And this is the time, not a lot of brothers up in Denver. And so his first 2 years, he had rocky seasons. Third year, he actually drops the weight. And now he's going out there and he's playing like his old self. Everyone's like, oh, I know what this is. But now he goes under the name Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. And they're like, all right. They say that it's all good. One of the announcers tends to notice that he's not standing when the national anthem is played. And mind you,
he was like a radio host, by the way.
Yeah, it was one of those shock jocks, and he notices that he's not standing. So he makes this a big thing. He puts it out, and it just takes off like wildfire. But this is the irony is this is the same thing that happened to Kaepernick. Kaepernick was kneeling before someone like actually noticed one day, and that's what's crazy. Is like, I've been doing this. He even said, Abdul Rauf was like, I was doing this like 3 months ago. No one said anything to me. The NBA didn't say anything to me. NFL for Kaepernick didn't say anything to him. So it's like all these people that are on these higher levels, no one said anything. No one noticed it. Now this shock jock reporter says something, and it just takes up like wildfire. He disrespects the anthem. And you know Americans, once you disrespect the anthem, all hell's going to break loose. So we go into that, and this takes his career on a world spin. And he has to decide, does he want to stand for his principles, or does he want to play ball and shut up? So I don't know if you have a point in your life where you had to like sacrifice something for your principles. I haven't had that yet. Maybe the biggest thing I had is I moved from New York to Miami. But, you know, I didn't really have anything to lose in terms of that. Just I got a tan now. But I really had to feel with him in terms of like, wow, imagine giving something up, your faith and your beliefs, because again, you got to pay the bills and kind of do everything else. But again, all I'm doing is just sitting down. And if people, I want to remind everybody again, the national anthem, they never do the third stanza, which I have here. No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. Basically, we will pursue you to get revenge is what that's saying. And so that is basically talking about enslavement. And so we always leave that third verse out, right? And that's a big part of that. So it's like we always, and I've always argued since anybody of a different color that complained to me like, I don't understand why I can't just stand for the anthem. I was like, Mahmoud
Do you
said,
even know
hey,
what it says?
yeah, exactly. Number one, that's the best thing about things. I don't know the whole song, but I know the first two and I like it. But but the other thing is, Mahmoud Abdul Rauf said, "Hey, you know what? Can I just go into the locker room when they do the national anthem?" And the NBA at that time, Stern was such an ASS hole. you know, he was charged of the NBA back then, the commissioner. He passed away due to cancer. Rest in peace. But he was the guy who was always in, like, he made AI and them all wear suits. This is when they were wearing the baggy chains and all that stuff. So he was one of those commissioners that he wasn't playing games. And so when this came out, he really stuck it to him. And then the option that they had to come up was, well, you can stand if you can stand, but he's like, well, can I pray at least? He's like, yeah, you can do that. And so that set up another wildfire. So what did you think about that? And what would you do if you had to sacrifice your principles?
One, the shock jock radio announcer, DJ, whatever he is, I mean, the fact that he says in the documentary, in order to like sustain yourself or to like level up in his career, you had to like do something that was shocking, right? So he understood what he was doing. And the fact that he kind of still stood firm in his decision to do that, and like, well, I didn't really believe what he stood for. No, you just very clearly said you found a moment that you knew would be shocking, and you knew it would stir up controversy, and you knew that would help propel your career to a greater place. But it would propel your career to a greater place at the detriment of people of color. And to me, that's disgusting. And to me, it's disgusting that he sat on this documentary with no shame and without an apologetic bone in his body. And it was disgusting. But it was great to see people who feel comfortable in their skin being disgusting and unapologetic for it, because I know where you stand. So for me, it was one of those moments where I say, like, everybody needs to watch these kind of conversations and really watch it with like an unbiased lens and understand the nature of what these people are saying and why they're doing the disgusting things they do and how they continue to justify the decisions and choices they made. It was very, very disgusting. And for the people around him, specifically the coach, who...
Oh, that brother, yo.
Let me explain. Okay. You sat here on this documentary and said, well, you know, there was distractions and you got to get rid of distractions. And you as well were one of the few people who had not an apologetic bone in your body. And to me, it's telling. Like, you were out to protect yourself. You were out to protect your position. I get it. You were like a Black man in a coaching position as a general manager. It was a rare occurrence, but also you are a person who could like really guide and steer these people, this young man, and help guide and steer the narrative. But I'm sure as well, at the time, slightly in his defense, he was getting a phone call from a lot of people in higher up offices that were probably like, wrangle your guy, get it together, or we're going to get you together. I'm sure he was getting those calls, whatever.
Yep.
But for the conversation with him to just kind of be so one-sided to me, and like there was no remorse, no sympathy, no like sense of apology from him, was shocking, because you were a part of the spurring of him being blackballed, and you were okay with that. And it was problematic for me. So this was a very difficult part of the documentary for me to watch, because it was this space of watching this man start to lose everything after you've seen him fight through his Tourette's, and his Tourette's like really develop him into one of the greatest basketball players that's ever touched the floor. And for him to be revered and admired by his peers in the way that he was, and for him to have fought to move his family into a space where they now have the means to, take care of themselves on a level that they probably never dreamed of. And to watch the people who were like supposed to shield him and be kind of a family to him on that court just not care to protect themselves was so hurtful to watch. And it was at least redeeming to see some of these grown men to see them broken down to the level of tears because they realized what they didn't do.
Yeah, Steve Kerr, that was great. I mean, now he's a coach. And he was like, at the time we played against him, he's like, he busted my behind when we played. He's like, but I didn't know. He's like, I wish I said more. I just didn't know. And now that I see it as a coach, and now back then, even Steve said it was like we didn't have social justice back then in sports. You didn't have a voice, and now you do have a voice that you can speak on these things. But he's like, I should have said something. And so I at least respect that more than the coach you're speaking about. He was just like, had no remorse and still was like, you know what? I was waiting for him to be like, you know what? It was a time where I couldn't do anything, and I regret I didn't do anything that time. But he was like, nah, man. I mean,
at least give me that,
right? And I would have listen. That's all I had to say. But you can't get in trouble like for something you did. So I mean, Jerry Jones didn't. So you can't get in trouble for something you did years ago. So it was just one of those things, man. It was crazy. And that must be hard, right? So, because your faith has to be so strong for everybody to be against you, right? And then you have no answers. And then once they take the money, it's like, what do I do? I don't know anything better. So as you mentioned, he gets blackballed from the NBA, and so they basically ship him to Sacramento at that time. Sacramento was awful that time, before Bibby comes and a couple other players, but it was awful that time. So shipped him to nowhere. They basically put him on the bench. One of the coaches comes up and is like, listen, we did our whole scheme based on you playing tonight, and you're not playing. He's like, I don't know, man. And then he's like, I started to see it, right? I started putting things together. I was like, I'm averaging 30 points. Like, they're not playing me. It's like, what do I do? And so they're slowly like pushing me out the door. And to a point, it's like, well, what's the point, right? Like, I don't enjoy basketball. He tried to go overseas, just couldn't get that connection again. And then he kind of he falls into a hole again, and his faith is questioned. And that's a big time, right? It's like, who do you go to? If my faith can't even hold me down, who do I have? And so my family, and being not only a protector, but also a provider for my family. How do I do that? I don't know anything else but basketball. I have no other education. I have nothing. So what do I do with that? And I love that. That was such a touching moment, because I think that happens with a lot of people, and especially people of color. You're just like, hey, you have this one skill set. You can shoot the ball in the hoop, or you can rap and rhyme, but eventually you're going to get old and you can't do it anymore, right? So what do, right? What other skill set did you learn? Did you learn how to produce? Did you learn how to be a commentator? All these things that you can still do in your field, but you need to get better at that. So how do you speak? How do you do this? What are your terminologies? And then he's like, I learned how to talk to people. And someone said, hey, you should tell your story. And that was, listen, I had a smile on my face from ear to ear, just grinning. I was like, that he found a light, because I was like, oh man, what happened to this brother? I was like, I forgot about him. And it's crazy, right? And that's the scary part about history, is that the reason why history repeats itself so many times is that we forget, because life goes on. Like this, I totally forgot about Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf when the Kaepernick thing went down. Like I don't even remember that. Like how did I just forget that?
Because we were much younger.
But I still it just didn't resonate with me at all. It was just one of those things. It's like, was I that much younger that I didn't remember it, or did I not really understand it until now? Right?
I don't think we understood it because
best of both. Yeah, and then so he
gets age, and two, because of proximity to the opportunity to really understand what was happening. Right? I don't think we were in a space then, and I don't think society was in a space where we are now, where we have these movements like Black Lives Matter, and we have these we're having more global conversations. There is social media. There is an opportunity to really like have greater conversations on a greater scale, because of opportunities like this, to have these conversations in a public space that people can just click in and watch. Like this wasn't happening back then. So, and we were much younger. So I think we are in a different time, so don't put too much pressure on yourself.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rob. So he has an opportunity to play again with the NBA. He's going to make a comeback. And then something happens, 9/11. And after 9/11, he had the worst last name that you would ever want to go into any sport, let alone a job. He wasn't going to get hired. And that was the end of his career when it came to basketball. And like I said earlier, he found a new way to kind of make money and speak to young kids and speak to people. And so I love that opened up another door for him. And that kind of showed me, like, don't always give up on yourself. There, you can always find a way to make it happen, but you still got to believe. You got to believe in yourself first before you can do anything else. And so I love that moment, because I think we all get down on ourselves. Like, we're in a new stage of our lives. You're like, as you get older, like, wow, what am I going to do now? I can't just start everything over again. But you can, but not really starting over, right? Because he still knew basketball. Now he's just speaking about it, basketball, and his experience through basketball, and also teaching the kids, which is great, right? Nothing better than teaching kids, and then they can see something and learn something and why he did that. What I noticed, though, I didn't see him do one kind of tick at all during the whole documentary. So I was wondering if he, yeah, if I could ask him, was like, are you clear, or is it, can you actually not have Tourette's anymore? But just because of the mental capacity and kind of dealing with life and understanding stuff. So it's a really great documentary. I have a question for you, Rob, before we wrap this up.
Oh, we can't wrap up. We didn't even get to the.
Oh, you want to get to? Okay, I was gonna leave. Okay, all right, my bad. I was gonna ask you a question.
Go ahead, ask me a question.
But in comparison to his life and Kaepernick's life, with the power of social media, who do you think had it worse?
I don't think that there can be a comparison of which of them had it worse, because one, I think they're both extremely difficult circumstances for these human beings to have to live through, because they have a passion and a love for something that they've worked very hard to become great, doing, and to have it stripped away because people are afraid of your perspective or your view, or they're afraid of your way of life, is disgusting. And then for you to want to stand for something, and for people to want you to close your mouth because you standing for something empowers other people. So you strip this person of their ability to perform, ability to live, ability to have a voice is awful. I will say one of the greater things that I think was harmful for
Mahmoud
Abdul Rauf was the timing of all of this happening and the location of all of this happening. And that's the thing I was going to say, like, we can't skip over not, having that conversation, because for him, one, being in Mississippi, and then two, for him, for the time period where, racism is always prominent, but for them to be marching down the street in Klan outfits,
and then it's not racism anymore. What are you talking about? We had a black
and then for them to
black person in the White House
to openly spray KKK on his house and then burn it down, and then for him to be such a gracious human being, and for him to be such a like enlightened, humble person, and to be able to like graciously and gracefully navigate that circumstance and publicly navigate that circumstance after he was like, and I would say unfairly targeted by the people who wanted to speak to him at HBO to have a conversation about 9/11 when they knew what that would do to his career and what that would do to him. I think he had it particularly awful. But also Colin Kaepernick had it awful too, for him to, want to stand for the rights of people who look like him, and for him to be stripped of his voice and stripped of his position that he earned, and to be stripped of, his income, and to be stripped of the thing that he loves because he stands for something is awful. And it was in his circumstance did happen at the height of us being in an awful space with a president who like sprayed gasoline on fire, on the fire of racism. So he also had it particularly hard in the time period when it happened to him. So I don't know if there's a comparison to be had because they both were dealing with like extremely heightened environments of
Well, I
racial
mean
tension
more.
and and you know, losing everything that they were passionate and worked hard for standing for something that they believe in.
Well, I meant more on the social media aspect. You know, I was gonna go in the favor of Mahmoud Abdul Rauf because only because Kaepernick had an outlet, right? And so when you can do your own social media nowadays, it's a lot easier to tell your side of the story. But back then, you had no outlet to go to, right? And so that's why I meant it was. That's what I was kind of leaning towards. It was worse for him because he had nobody to be like, oh, you know what? I want to hear his perspective. I want to hear his story, what actually happened. There was
But also in that same vein, you know, Colin Kaepernick also has a heightened sense of awareness of the way people feel about him constantly popping up on his phone all day long.
yeah.
So,
I mean,
you
again,
know,
you can throw that. You can turn that off. You can throw that away. You can throw that away.
while we say we can turn it off, I'm not a person who lives in the public eye in that way.
Yeah,
And
you're right.
you know, so you waking up every day and knowing that conversation is being had about you, I don't know how easy it is to turn it off and to know that people around you are affected by it, the
Yeah,
people you love that are close to you are affected by it, and they're getting that kind of conversation constantly. They're being inundated with that all day. So yes, I do understand your point, but on the flip side, I think it's also harder for him because he is in a digital society where he's constantly being inundated with negative messages about himself.
that's a valid point, Rob. It's a valid point. All right, so we're going towards the end of the documentary here, and like I said, they burned down his house, and the energy that he had was such. I don't know if I could do that. I mean, whew, I believe in certain things, but I believe you gonna get your ass kicked. No, I'm not playing with you on that. You know, especially my hard-earned money and just the fact that and the best part is when they ask his friends, like, yeah, why did you build a house and buy all this acres on Mississippi? And then the first thing they go to is a Confederate flag on like every kind of store. I was like,
Right.
why? And honestly, I was like, so I can get 100 acres for how much? Oh man, this sounds like a great idea, baby. No, 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 no. I just couldn't understand that. So, um, the NBA owes him a huge apology. Coaches owe him an apology. America owes him an apology. I love how the last thing I'll say on this is, you know, they always think we're going to be the person that's going to do this, burn down stuff. We're gonna steal stuff. We're gonna take something from you, and it's always them that do it. You know, and that's what I loved about, you know, when he said it, was like, you know, they said I was going to burn down the city. They burned down my house. You know, it's like, you know, we always stay positive and stay amazing and beautiful people. And I'm just scared, man, that one day it's just going to hit a head where it's just like, you know, I'm tired of being nice. You know, you got to really start understanding people and not put a color on the person, like see the person. And so if anything,
also see my color.
No, of course, but understand in that color that there's a person there. That's my point. That's my point of saying that. It's like that person, that black person is a person, you know. So treat them the same way you treat everyone else, and also be mindful of what they go through every day, you know. And I'll say when I said it to you when I was in Japan, man. The one thing that I keep telling my friends and my white friends, I'm like, you know what? You don't understand what a black person goes through every day mentally. I can't, black women, I can't even go into that other realm. But for a black man to go into a store and be the only person there, and I had so many thoughts. Like, but what if someone takes something, they blame it on me? Like, I'm a fish. Like, you're that one aspect, and then the other part is like, but no one's looking at me and no one's expecting me to do that. And that's crazy when your mindset kind of changes and you let your guard down, right? And you actually just enjoy being on vacation. Think about that, right? Like I'm just going to the store and I didn't buy anything and I walk out. Versus like I went to the store and thinking about it. I mean, I was telling my friends, like, they're like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, you don't get it. I was like, I have to think about that every time I do something. Every
Absolutely.
time I do something. And so that just kind of breaks you down every day to start your day. right? I got to think about if I put a hoodie on back when they were doing stop and frisk in New York. Well, it's freezing out, but if I wear a pink or purple hoodie, maybe they won't get any
No,
problems.
I still think about that, you know.
Yeah.
And I'll honestly, like, you know, there's a daycare near where I live, and if I'm walking my dog in the morning and I choose to put on a hoodie, I don't care if it's pink or purple or has a rainbow flag on it, you know, it's a hoodie, and I'm a person of color. I'm a black man walking out with a hoodie, and I know there's a level of, like, you know, built-in fear that could come with that, and I do have to think about that, and it's unfortunate that we do have to think about these things that the average person doesn't have to you know, consider when they walk outside. So I completely understand.
Yeah. So again, please check out the documentary. It's called Stand. It's on Showtime. I think they're doing a free trial right now. If you
You love giving out this free trial, these free trials.
listen,
Free trial.
try it out for a week. You like it? Showtime. Holla at your boy. But hey, otherwise, I think it's $14 a month. Showtime's getting good.
It was $10. It was like $10.99.
Why are you being cheap, Rob? Just buy the show.
I'm paying $10.99, $20.99, $4.99. It adds up.
Get 4 friends and you get one.
It starts adding up, and then they be creeping it up $2. Don't tell you.
I know you need 2 exes that have like something like, "Hey, we still cool," and then you keep
your fair accounts. Just trade them off.
That's it. You get 2, I get 2, and we kind of go from there. Don't ask questions. Don't change my algorithms though. Anyway, hey, this is a great show. Wow, we went an hour. Sorry, everybody, but it was a lot to unfold. And the doc is only an hour and 30. But again, even if you're not a huge basketball fan or a sports fan, you will become a huge fan, and you will understand just to step outside of your own shoes for a day or even for an hour and 30 minutes. It's a beautiful moment. You see this young man grow into an older man who went through a lot of stuff, but still is in America, right? Still lives. That's another crazy thing. You still live in America. You still love America and all of that. I mean, it still blows my mind. All the hate you got, but still had love for us. So it's a lot to unfold there. But Rob, any last words?
Yeah. If you're not a sports fan, I don't think it matters because this isn't about sports. It's about humanity, and it's about us collectively having a greater understanding and respect for one another, regardless of, you know, religious preference, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual. It doesn't matter. This is about us being able to see the humanity in each other and understand the differences in each other and not be afraid of the things that make us different, but embrace the things that make us different, and to not villainize one another for making choices that are outside of the ones that we make if they're not harmful to you. Like he was a calm, peaceful, respectful, loving human being who worked extremely hard to be great at something he loved and to take care of the people that he most loved, which was his family. And that was stripped away from him because he chose to go down a path of pursuing a religion that he found peace and calm in himself and peace and calm in others from. And the fact that the world found fear in that, and the world made him into the villain when he was actually a calm, loving person, but the people wanted to make him a villain, so they became villains. And it's very, very, you know, it's I would say an interesting case study on human behavior, because the people who were saying we're afraid of you became the people who had the torches and the spikes and the guns. They became the monsters to extinguish what they considered a monster, and the thing that they considered a monster was not.
It's like the book Frankenstein, right? You know, it's exactly it. I mean, people fear the unknown, and that's what we see time and time again. That's I mean the basis of racism is like you just don't understand what that person is or who they're going to be, and especially that person that's talented. Well, what if he takes his talent to the next level and then he starts spreading all this, you know, all over the place? It's going to be crazy. It's going to be a madhouse. You mean there's going to be peace everywhere? Yeah, and I don't want that in America. I want to be able to shoot my gun and have a good time. So anyway, yeah, thank you, Rob. You hit the nail on the head there. Please check it out. Again, it's called Stand. It's on Showtime. Tell a friend to check out Rewind with Rob. We'll be here again next week. And that's our time. Thank you so much. Shout out to LeBron James. He has the most highest scored records of all time. He beat Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So shout out to him. Speaking in the basketball terms, and the NBA just went crazy this week. Made a lot of trades. So if you're an NBA fan, good luck because you have to buy a new jersey. Anyway, that's our time. I am your host, Ro Carter. My co-host Rob. Thank you again for tuning in. Tell a friend. See you next week. Peace.